Hello students, how are you all? So today we are covering chapter 6 of class 6 NCERT history subject. So what is the name of the chapter? So name will tell us the path, right? What chapter, what topics, concepts we will be covering today. So chapter 6 is about new questions and ideas, right? So this was the time. Until now what we have covered is Rig Veda, right? Rigvedic times and later Vedic times, the time when political organization, political boundaries were created by Rajas. Rajas gained strength and they were aware of their powers. They started standing army concept, right? Armies were regularly there for the Raja, for security, for the safety of the empire, right? We had Magad Empire. We also looked at Magad Empire's success, right? Mahajanpadas. Okay. Today, new question and ideas. What were the new questions that were emerging? What were the new ideas that emerged on the scene, right? So it is today we will be covering Buddhism, Jainism. These were the new ideas that provided a platform, that provided a relief in the life of the people, that the people who were suffering from their life, right? It showed them a new way, right, to find happiness, to find peace. Okay, all the students who are live or who are there on YouTube can send me a hi or can raise their hand, right? Okay, now let's start. So we will start with the story of the Buddha. So we all know that Buddhism was the work, Buddhism was the concept that was given by Buddha, the great Buddha, right? Even now many followers are there, right? So Buddhism believes in what? Non-violence. Buddhism believes in peace. Buddhism believes in brotherhood, equality, non-discrimination, right? Okay, now Siddhartha. See, one kind of question that comes in UPSC is related to what? Different kinds of names that are given to Buddhas. So, different names given to Buddhas. Second kind of question that comes in UPSC is related to the places associated with Buddha, right? So, books associated with Buddhism, places associated with Buddha, important events and the location, like Buddha gave his first sermon on which place, right? So these topics are all covered in this chapter, right? Siddhartha, also known as Gautama, so he is the founder of Buddhism, right? And was born about 2500 years ago. This was a time of, so what was the time? What all factors contributed to the rise of Buddhism and Buddhism gaining popularity? So we'll cover that. Okay, so this was a time of rapid change. There were many factors and forces which provided for the emergence of Buddhism. So rapid change was there, right? Money economy was there, trade was there, and many people were there who were suffering from many social evils, like untouchability was there, right? Okay, so rapid change in the life of people. Okay, and what happened with this rapid change? Okay, so now see. Okay, some kings in Mahajanpadas were growing more powerful, right? And then new cities were developing. This was the situation that was there. Mahajanpadas, some of the Mahajanpadas gained popularity like Magad, right? And then new cities were developing. Life was changing in the villages as well. Not only cities, but villages also life changed. Many thinkers were trying to understand these changes in society, right? So thinkers, they were also emerging. Now, they also wanted to try and find out the true meaning of life. So why Buddhism and Jainism emerged? It is because of their search of meaning of life, right? They wanted to know about the purpose of life, the meaning of life, right? So this was the thing. Buddha belonged to a small Gana. Now again coming back to Buddha. So we know now that what was the kind of environment during that time, the society during that time. Now again to Buddha. So Buddha belonged to a small Gana known as Shakya Gana. Very, very important question has come from this information that Buddha was also known as Shakyamuni because he belonged to Shakyagana, right? And was a Kshatriya. Jainism, Buddhism, Buddha, Mahavira, they all were Kshatriyas, right? And then when he was a young man, he left the comforts of his home in search of knowledge, right? So he went out to gain the meaning of life, insights of life. He wandered for several years. He met many people, many sages of that time, and holded discussions. So he held discussions with the people, the sages, the thinkers of the time, but he could not get to the final result. He could not agree with their mindset or their perception with other thinkers. He finally decided, see, his mindset, his perspective was totally different and others' perspective was totally different. So they could not come on a common platform. So he did what? He went on to find his own path to realization, started meditating, and then meditated for years, days on end under a peepal tree at Bodh Gaya. Very, very important information is that he meditated under a peepal tree in Bodh Gaya, which is in Bihar. These are all important information facts that we have to remember for UPSC. Okay, Buddhism, Jainism are one of the important and favorite topics of UPSC, and we should not miss any information which is given in NCERT. Right now, where he attained enlightenment. So enlightenment was attained by Buddha in Bodh Gaya, Bihar. We have to remember this thing. After that, he was known as Buddha or the Wise One, right? So he is also called as Buddha or the Wise One and Shakyamuni. These are the names given to him. He then went on to Sarnath. Okay, so Buddha went on to Sarnath, where he gave his first sermon. This was the place he taught his disciples for the very first time. So this information is very, very important. He gave the meaning of Dharma Chakra Parivartana, right? Varanasi. Sarnath is there, it is in Varanasi. And then where he taught for the first time. He spent the rest of his life traveling on foot and going from place to place, teaching people as he passed away at Kusinara. Right? So Kusinara is another place. So what are the important places where Buddha went? First is Varanasi, Sarnath, right? Sarnath in Varanasi, and then second place is Kusinara, right? So these are the places you have to remember. And why am I saying this? Because questions come from this information. This is Sarnath, right? Stupa at Sarnath, the building known as a stupa, was built to mark the place where Buddha first taught his message, right? And Buddha taught that. Now, what are the teachings of Buddha, right? So he taught that life is full of suffering, and suffering can be removed by what? By knowledge, right? Full of suffering and unhappiness. All have a suffering, all are unhappy in their life. But this is caused. Why? Because humans, they naturally have desires, they have cravings, right? Sometimes, even if we get what we want, we are not satisfied, right? Our desires has no end, right? So this is why people are suffering. So there has to be a moderation in what you desire or what you want to achieve, right? So sometimes even if we get what we want, we are not satisfied. And this is the problem. This is why we are suffering, right? So Buddha described this as thirst or tanha. Very, very important. One question that can be asked is, what is tanha according to Buddhism? So this is thirst, right? Thirst of getting more and more, right? Your desires, okay? He taught that this constant craving could be removed by following moderation. Moderation in Hindi, it is called Madhyam Marg, right? So moderation, he gave the term Madhyam Marg, right? This is important, okay? Now, he also taught, so first is what? First he told us about suffering, and the cause of suffering is what? Desires, right? Cravings, which has no end, no limit. And then he showed the solution also, that what is the solution? The moderation in everything, right? So if you have the Madhyam Marg, if you choose the Madhyam Marg, you will never be undesired, right? you will have control. So he also taught people to be kind and to respect the life of others. So respect was another important thing which people were getting when they accepted Buddhism. And then people should be kind towards others, right, including animals. Non-violence, it is not only associated with human beings, but non-violence should be practiced even to living organisms, living creatures on this earth, right? Okay, he believed that the results of our actions, which is called karma, whether good or bad, affect us both in this life and the next. So karma, he believed in karma, and this affects your life. Understand this thing very clearly. Okay, the Buddha taught, very important point, one information on which many times question has come, that what was the language in which Buddha taught. So language was Prakrit. Buddha taught in the language of the common man, which is Prakrit, and everybody. Why? Because he wanted each of the human to understand the message that he was giving, right? Before this, what was happening? Sanskrit language was being used. Sanskrit was not easy to understand, right? And people were speaking what language? Prakrit language, Pali language. And this was where Buddhism and Jainism got the connection with people, right? Okay. What was the language used to compose the Vedas? So Vedas are written in Sanskrit language, right? Now, he also encouraged people to think for themselves rather than to simply accept what he said. See, now he's being very understanding, right? That he was saying to people that you should not exactly follow what I say, but you should consider everything, right? Investigate everything what I say, and according to your needs and demands, you should make your own strategy, right? Own path, right? So this is how you should lead a life, okay? Now, next is what? The story of Kissa Gautami. It is a very interesting story. So there was this lady, right? And then this story is from Buddha's life. So there was this woman named Kissa Gautami, whose son had died, and she was crying, she was sad, unhappy, right? And then what happened? She was roaming here and there, that I want my son back, right? So one man took her to Buddha. Excuse me. Okay. So one man took her to Buddha. A kind man took her to the Buddha, and Buddha said, okay, I'll solve your problem, I'll bring back your son. But first you have to do one thing. You have to bring a handful of mustard seeds, okay, and I will bring your child back to life. But one condition was there, that the seeds must come from the house of a family where nobody has died. Okay, now what happened? Kissa Gautami went from one door to another door. Wherever she went, somebody she found that someone or the other had been dead, right? Mother, father, sister. So every home there was one death, right? So what is the summary of the story? Said that death is inevitable. Death is the reality of life, right? So you should accept it. So by this way, he gave the message to that woman, and she stopped crying. She understood the message of Buddha. Now, it is talking about 6 schools of Indian philosophy, right? So this was the time period when 6 schools of Indian philosophy were there. We have 6 schools of Indian philosophy. So what are the names? These are known as Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Samkhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa and Vedanta, or Uttar Mimamsa. And from this part also UPSC has asked question. And what was the question? That Vaisheshika, match the following. So the books, the Indian philosophy schools, and the founder of the schools. So this was the question. So who are the founders of the 6th system of philosophy? So they were founded by Vaisheshika, were founded by Konada, Nyaya, Gautama, right? Samkhya, Kapila, Yoga, Patanjali, and Purva Mimamsa by Jaimini, and Uttar Mimamsa by Vyas. So this is very, very important for our examination, right? Hello Rekha, how are you? Okay, these philosophies still guide scholarly discourse in the country. And then German-born British Indologist Frederick Max Muller, right, very important person, has observed that the 6 systems were developed over many generations, which with contributions made by individual thinkers, right. So many generations it took, and many contribution had been given by different generations, right. So this is the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. Now Upanishad, very important. What are Upanishads, right? So they are around the time various other thinkers also tried to find answer. So one was what? One was Buddhism, Jainism, these were the things that were going on. Other side, Upanishads were there, right? Critical examination of everything. Upanishad says what? Critical examination should be there, right? Whatever we do, we should try to find the reason for it, okay? Now, thinkers also tried to find answer to philosophical question. Some of them wanted to know about life after death. Others wanted to know why sacrifices were performed. So there were many sacrifices, and Upanishad says that whatever sacrifice you perform, whatever activity you do, you should know the reason of that thing, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we performing any sacrifice? Many of these thinkers felt that there was something permanent in the universe that would last even after death, right? And then they describe this something which is everlasting. So this is what? This is Atman, or the individual soul, and the Brahman, or the universal soul. So two, individual soul and universal soul. These are the two things that exist, right? And then they believe that ultimately both the Atman and Brahman were one. In this school of philosophy also, it is talking about Atman, Brahman, right? What is the relationship? What is the link? What originated from where, right? Atman originated from Brahman, or Brahman originated from Atman. So this is the relationship that they are talking about, okay? Many of their ideas were recorded in the Upanishad. So these discussions are recorded in Upanishads, okay? These were part of the later Vedic text. So one thing that we know is that Upanishads were a part of later Vedic text. Remember this point? Upanishad. Now, what is the meaning of Upanishad? This question has also come. So Upanishad literal meaning is what? Sitting, approaching and sitting near, okay? Approaching and sitting near and the text contain conversation between teacher and students, right? So Upanishad means sitting near the teacher, okay? This is the meaning, literal meaning, and the text, it is also talking about the subject that it is dealing with is what? Conversation between teacher and student. So what kind of conversation? There will be what? Curiosity will be there in students' mind. They will be asking questions, right? So this is the conversation. Often ideas were presented through simple dialogues. So the wise beggar, there is this dialogue in Chandogya Upanishad, right? A dialogue between beggar and what? Sages, right? Read this. This is a very important information, okay? Now, most Upanishadic thinkers, see, the nature of Upanishad. Now it is telling us about nature of Upanishad. So most of the Upanishadic thinkers, they were men. See, most were men, not all were men, okay? Upanishad have some women thinkers also, the contributions from women thinkers also, especially Brahmins and Rajas, right? Very important. Occasionally there is mention of women thinkers, okay? The names have also been given, which is Gargi, Apala, Ghosha, Maitreyi, and who were famous for their learning, participated in debates, okay? Poor people rarely took part in these discussions. One famous exception was Satyakama Jabala, right? So all the names are very important. Question can come from this part. Who was named after his mother? So his mother name was Jabali, and he was called as Satyakama Jabala. He had a deep desire to learn about reality, was accepted as a student by a Brahmin teacher, and then named Gautama, okay, Gautama, and became one of the best known thinkers of his time. Many of the ideas of Upanishad were later developed by very important personality, which is Shankaracharya, right? And we'll learn about him in our next classes, okay? Panini, the grammarian, very important. Who is Panini? He is called the father of classical Sanskrit. Vedas are written in What Sanskrit? Tell me in the comment section in which Sanskrit Vedas are written. But Panini, he wrote the grammar, okay, and he is called as father of classical Sanskrit, okay. Very important information. This was also the time when other scholars were at work. One of the most famous was Panini. He prepared a grammar for Sanskrit rules, right, that should be followed. So that is why now the Sanskrit that we know is classical Sanskrit, right. And he arranged the vowels and consonants in a special order, then used these to create formulae, okay. He used these to write down the rulers of language in short formulae. So this is Panini's work. So very, very important, okay. Now coming to Jainism. Jainism, the founder is Mahavira, right. Mahavira is the founder of Jainism. The last and 24th Tirthankara of the Jainas, Vardhaman Mahavira. He was the last, and there were 23 other Tirthankaras. Tirthankara means what? Teachers, right. So these people, they were considered as teachers, okay. Now they spread his message around this time. So contemporary, Buddhism, Jainism, they are contemporaries. Remember this point? And he was also a Kshatriya prince, Lichvi dynasty, right, Lichvi clan. A group that was part of Vajji Sangh. Very, very important Vajji story. We already know, we covered this in our last chapter, that what happened when Ajatashatru wanted to conquer Vajjis, wanted to defeat Vajjis, he sent his minister to Buddha. And what solution Buddha provided, right? What Buddha asked to this minister? You should read that, and whatever information is given in boxes, they become very important. Whatever map is there, that is also very important. You should always read the information given in boxes, okay. Vajji Sangha. So Mahavira is from Vajji Sangha. So this question can also be asked, and this has been asked in previous year, okay, about which we will read in chapter 5, okay. We have already read, right. At the age of 30, he left home. Who? Vardhaman Mahavira, and then went to live in a forest. For 12 years, he led a hard and lonely life, and then he gained what? Kaivalya, enlightenment, right. Kaivalya in Mahavira, in Buddhism, in Jainism. Now the teachings of Mahavira, very, very important. What were the teaching of Mahavira? Jainism, Buddhism we know, right. Simple life, and then non-violence, love should be there, kindness should be there, respect should be there for everyone. Now Jainism, he taught a simple doctrine that men and women who wished to know the truth must leave their homes, right. Otherwise they will not be able to gain the knowledge, the truth of life, okay. And all beings long to live, to all the things life is dear, right. So he was telling us that everything has a life and every life is dear, right. Every life is dear. Ordinary people could understand the teaching of Mahavira and his followers. Why? Because he too used Prakrit language. Very, very important. The language that Vardhaman Mahavira used was Prakrit language, and this was a common language. This was a vernacular language, right. That's why people understood the message completely. There were several forms of Prakrit which were used in different parts of the country, right. Like Prakrit spoken in Magad was known as Magadhi, right. So Magad region. Followers of Mahavira, who were known as Jainas, had to lead very simple life, right. No violence, no lavish life, okay, no comfort, begging for food. So they were begging for food. Whatever they were getting, they had to consume that thing, and they had to limit themselves, okay. Control, right. They had to be absolutely honest. Honesty is very, very important. Yes or no? Who all students are there? Send me a hi. Are you getting everything? So we are covering Buddhism, Jainism, new ideas, new questions that were arising, right. Okay. During 6th century BCE, okay. Chalo. They had to be absolutely honest. Honesty is required, right. And were especially asked not to steal. Very, very important, right. Doctrines given by these teachers, and then they had to observe celibacy. This celibacy was added by Vardhaman Mahavira, okay, and men had to give up everything including their clothes, right. Okay. Now, it was very difficult for most men and women to follow these rules, right? Strict rules. Nevertheless, thousands left their homes to learn what? Learn this Jainism and teach this new way of life, living hard life, restricting yourself, restricting your desires, right? And many more remained behind and supported these monks and nuns, providing them with food. So they were not, many people were not living this life, this hard life, right? Jainism was very hard than Buddhism. Following Jainism principle was hard, right? And then these monks and nuns. So what people did, ordinary people who were not following Jainism, they tried to do what? They tried supporting these monks and nuns, right? Providing them food, whatever they could do in their capacity. Jainism was supported by mainly by traders. These traders were very powerful. They had money. They were traveling and they were carrying these ideas with themselves and then spreading, right? Farmers who had to kill insects to protect their crops found it more difficult, because Jainism, Mahavira believed that everything has a life, right? So we should not kill anyone, okay? Every life is dear, right? So it is not okay, okay? So now what happened? Farmers were finding it difficult to follow this faith, right? Over 100 of years, Jainism spread to different parts of North India, to Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, very, very important, Karnataka. The teaching of Mahavira and his followers were transmitted orally for several centuries after that, and then they were written down in the form in which they are available to us. And very important information, where they were written down? In Vallabhi, which is in Gujarat, about 1500 years ago. Okay. Now the Sangha. What are the Sanghas? Okay. See, now Sangha. So there is a Sangha in both Buddhism and Jainism. So these Sanghas, Mahavira and Buddha felt that only those who would be leaving their home, they can gain true knowledge, right? Because you have to overcome your desires, right? So they arranged for them to stay together in the Sangha. They made this Sangha, right? An association. What are Sanghas? What is Sangha? So an association of those who left their homes. It is clearly given. The rules made for the Buddhist Sangh. Very, very important. The rules that were made for Buddhist Sangh, they were written down in a book which is called Vinay Pitak. Vinay Pitak, right? Buddhist Sangh rules. Okay, it is given in Vinay Pitak. Remember this point. Questions have come from this information and it will be coming, repeating again. Okay, we know that there were separate branches for men and women. All men could join the Sangh. However, children had to take the permission. See, whoever people were there, right? Sections of people, right? They had to take permission. Like children, they had to take permission of their parents. Slaves were there, so they had to take permission of their masters. Then only they were able to join the Sangha. Okay, and those who worked for the king had to take permission, and debtors, that of creditors. So responsibilities have been given. Okay, all have to take permission and then free themselves, and then they come and join what? Buddhism, right? Women had to take their husband's permission. It is clearly written. Anytime any question can be made from this information. Now, men and women who joined the Sangha led simple life. So simple life is the life, okay, that they will be leading. Now they meditated for most of the time. Meditation is the practice that they are doing. Went to cities and villages to beg for food during fixed hours, okay. So proper timetable they have to follow. This is why they were known as bhikkhus, the Prakrit word for renouncers, bhikkhus, right? They were called as bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. So male were called as bhikkhus, females were called as bhikkhunis. They taught others. What was their job? So they were teaching others and helped one another. They also held meetings to settle any quarrels that took place within the Sangha, right? So everything, coordination should be there, unity should be there, peace should be there. Those who joined the Sangha included what? Now very, very important information. Who were the people who were joining the Sangha? So Brahmins were there, Kshatriyas were allowed, merchants were allowed, laborers, barbers, slaves, courtesans, these were allowed, right? Many of them wrote down the teaching of the Buddha, and then some of them also composed poems and describing their life in the Sangha. Very important information has been given in NCERT. These are the areas from where the question come. Now, we have covered Buddhism, we have covered Jainism, we have covered Sangha. Now, what are viharas, right? Okay. So, a cave hollowed out in the hills. This is a cave in Karle, present day Maharashtra. Bhikkhus and bhikkhunis lived and meditated in these shelters. Viharas, they were the places where these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis used to settle down for a duration during rainy season. Okay. Now, to begin with, both Jaina and Buddhist monk, they went from place to place teaching people. This was their responsibility, right? Now, the only time they stayed in the place was during the rainy season, because it was they could not take this travel thing, right, in the rainy season when it was very difficult, right, because of the difficulty that they were facing during rainy season. Then their supporters built temporary shelters which were called as viharas, right, and then in gardens, or they lived in natural caves. So this is what example of cave. Okay. As time went on, many supporters of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis and they themselves felt the need for more permanent shelter. So necessity is the mother of invention. So because they were traveling, right, and what happened? They felt a need that more permanent settlement are needed. So more monasteries were built, right, and this led to the emergence of monasteries. Viharas, more viharas, these were known as viharas, monasteries. The earliest vihara were made of wood and then of brick. Very, very important information given that earlier. Exact this statement could be asked in UPSC, that the earliest viharas were made of wood and then of brick. Is it correct or not correct, right? Okay. Some were even in caves, they were dug out in hills, especially in Western India, like we see, right? Karle caves is the example. Okay, so they were dug out in hills. Okay, now, okay, very often the land on which the vihara was built was donated by a rich merchant or landowner or the king, right? So these were the people who were donating these lands to build viharas, right? The local people came with gifts of food, clothing, medicine for the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis. See, this is how ordinary people who could not follow Buddhism or Jainism, they were participating, they were supporting, they were helping, right? Okay, hello everyone. How are you all? Okay, now in return, they taught the people. Over the centuries, Buddhism spread to many parts of the subcontinent and beyond, right? Even now we see that many countries, they are following what? Buddhism. Yes, and it is a popular faith, a new form of Buddhism. Now, we know that there were dissection in Buddhism after the death of Buddha, right? So, one form was Mahayana Buddhism and there is this Theravada Buddhism, right? So, Mahayana Buddhism is there, which now developed. This had two distinct features, right? It is different. How? Earlier, the Buddha's presence was shown in sculpture by using certain signs, right? Buddha's presence, Buddha was depicted by some symbols, some signs were there. Okay. For instance, his attainment of enlightenment was shown by the sculpture of the peepal tree. Okay. Now what happened? Now statues in Mahayana Buddhism, very, very important. Mahayana Buddhism statues were made. They started making statues under Mahayana Buddhism. Many of these were made in Mathura. So Mathura was the place where Mahayana Buddhism was practiced, while others were made in Takshila. Very, very important. Takshila, Mathura, right? So statues. The second change was a belief in Bodhisattva. So it is telling us about two important information, that first, statues were there under Mahayana Buddhism. Second, Bodhisattva concept is there under Mahayana Buddhism. Okay. Who are Bodhisattvas? definition. So because see, NCERT is defining us everything. That is why the questions are asked that who is a bodhisattva, right? This kind of question has come. So these were supposed to be persons. It is defining. NCERT is giving us a proper definition which is asked in UPSC, that these were supposed to be persons who had what? Who had attained, one second, who had attained enlightenment. So bodhisattvas are the people who attained enlightenment, and once they attained enlightenment, they could live in complete isolation and meditate in peace, right? And then instead of doing that, they remained in the world to teach and help other people, right? So once they have attained enlightenment, they could remain in complete isolation. But instead of doing that, they were helping others to gain enlightenment and get freedom from the sufferings of life. And the worship of bodhisattvas, it became very popular and spread throughout the Central Asia, China, Korea and Japan. Very, very important. Where is bodhisattva culture very popular? The concept is very popular in Central Asia, China, Korea, Japan. Clearly it is mentioning. Buddhism spread to western and southern India, Karnataka, where dozens of caves were hollowed down out for bhikkhus, right? Bhikkhus to live in. Buddhism also spread southeastwards to Sri Lanka, Myanmar and other parts of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia. Very, very important. You will find Buddhism being practiced in these countries. The older form of Buddhism, known as Theravada Buddhism, was more popular in these areas. Theravada is associated with the original teachings of Buddha. It is rooted in original teaching, Mahayana. It is a modified form of Buddhism where statues are made, right? Where Buddha is worshipped, where there is concept of bodhisattva. So question has come that bodhisattva is the concept in what form of Buddhism, okay? So remember this information, okay? Now, it is defined, okay. So stages of life. This box is giving us information about the stages of life. These information that are given in boxes, I am repeating again and again that they are very important. So ashrama is what? Ashrama is stage of life. There are 4 stages, right? 4 ashramas in a human's life has been recognized, which are brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and samyas, okay? Now, brahmana, kshatriya and vaishya, see the discrimination. They were expected to lead a simple life and study the Vedas during the early years of their life, which is brahmacharya. Then what happened to these 3 class? Hello, Yash, how are you? Okay. Now see, then they had to marry and live as householders, which was called grihastha ashram, brahmacharya. They were studying grihastha. They had to marry and settle, and then they had to live in the forest and meditate, which is called vanaprastha, okay? Next stage is what? They had to give up everything and become sannyasis. That this system of ashram allowed a person to spend some parts of their life live in meditation, okay? So sannyas was the last stage. Yes? Okay. Okay, let's move. We have done this, yes. Now who are pilgrims? Pilgrims are who? Men and women who undertake journey to holy places, right? In order to what? Offer worship. So they are called pilgrims, right? The best known of these are Chinese Buddhist pilgrims. Very, very important information. Every year you will see the question from this box. Mark my word, every year. Repetitively it has been coming, okay? So pilgrims are the people who undertake journeys to holy places, right? Names have been given. What are the names? Fayan, okay, who came to the subcontinent around 1600 years ago. Now Xuanzang is there and Itzing is there, okay? So Itzing is there, who came about 50 years ago, okay? Okay. Each of these pilgrims left an account of his journey. They wrote of dangers they encountered on their travels. So these pilgrims, Fa Yan, Xuanzang, these people were roaming and they were writing everything, which makes a Buddhist source very important source of history, right? And then they visited many countries, okay? And the books that they carried back with them, okay? Now it is, next information is regarding Nalanda, okay? Nalanda is a what? A first, India's first residential university. Nalanda was there, right? So Nalanda, a unique center of learning. It was one of the earliest center of learning. It was world's first residential complex, residential university, right? Great center of learning, okay. Xuanzang and other pilgrims, they spent time studying in Nalanda, which is in Bihar, right, the most famous Buddhist monastery. This is how he describes it. So Xuanzang has given a description which you can read and then you can gain knowledge that what were the kind of system during that time in Nalanda University, okay. So this is regarding this chapter, and now questions have been given. So what you can do is you can give the answers for this question, right? Okay, okay. So this was all Buddhism, Jainism, Sangha, Vihara, and then Nalanda University, different stages of life, six schools of philosophy, right? Indian schools of philosophy. So these are all the important areas from where questions are coming in UPSC prelims. So you should remember everything, make note of it, try to answer these questions, and we will meet you in the next chapter with chapter number 7, class 6 NCERT history, okay. And until then you can share, like and subscribe to our channel, YouTube channel Alchemy Ias. Thank you very much. Stay blessed, stay healthy and keep studying.